Tyler Dawn Rosenquist of Context for Kids and Character in Context. And today I'm going to talk to you about Tishri 1 and the Great Cosmic Kingship Reset. So welcome to the Fall Festivals. If this is your first year, then let me apologize in advance for all the drama people will want to unload on you about what they think is important when the Bible gives us frustratingly little to actually go on, as far as how to celebrate or even what to call them sometimes. Maybe you've gotten caught up in the red rapture alert and the end of the world predictions that happen every single year without fail and without fulfillment. But rest assured, the people who made those predictions, like the guy who called for the destruction of America last year and admitted to heading up into the Appalachians to watch the destruction, well, they'll either pretend like it never happened or will find some way to spiritualize what God said in order to save themselves from admitting that they are false prophets. Or they'll call down curses and rebuke those who doubt their claims that their prayers averted the disaster. And then they will wash, rinse, and repeat next year, having learned nothing. And so they never deal with the fallout, and people like me are left to talk folks down from the ledge. In fact, I lived in the California Central Valley during the Harold Camping brouhaha, where he convinced a ton of people that the rapture would happen back in 2011. Folks actually sold everything they had and gave the money away and drove around with huge back window stickers heralding the end of the world on their cars. They lost everything because they put their faith in a compelling preacher. I imagine that many even lost their faith entirely because they had placed it in a fortune teller instead of in the Messiah. So this time of the year can be particularly treacherous for new believers and for those who feel like they can know the future and therefore maintain some illusion of control. And hey, that used to be me too, okay? But Tishri 1 isn't about any of that. Nor is it about whether you call it Yom Teruah, which means the day of blowing, blasting, loud noise, etc., specifically related to the sound of the shofar, also known as, an animal horn, but shofar sounds so much better, doesn't it? Or Rosh Hashanah, meaning the head of the year, because both are legitimate descriptions, but neither are specifically named, as are Yom Kippur, or actually Yom HaKippurim, and the Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot. More about these two in part 2 and 3 of this series. Whereas Passover month marks the beginning of the festival years and the start of months, the fall festivals mark the beginning of the new agricultural year, which is every bit as important when you are living in an agrarian culture. Tishri is the month when the harvest is in. Land was returned to the original owners in the Jubilee, debt slaves were released, and things just flat out changed based on which of the 7 years one just entered into. That all happens in Tishri, and so it is, as the Bible calls it, the turn of the year or the end of the year, as we see in Exodus 23:16. Tishri is the great yearly agricultural reset where the year both begins and ends. As I go through this series, I will do a lot of explaining why this month was the most important of the year to those who were in need of rest, and why the celebration really lasted most of an entire month, both at home and in Jerusalem. As Aviv or Nisan represented the yearly celebration of their national reset, the Exodus, Tishri is the month of the kingly decrees of release, provision, abundance, remission, manumission, which is the freeing of slaves, and rest. And I will explain all those as we come to them. Tishri is the month when the king makes all things new again, and the blasting of the shofar, Teruah, marks the beginning of the new year, Rosh Hashanah. So the next time someone wants to argue about which one is right, you can assure them that both are correct, but they are more correct together than separated. If everything was about to change, in a good way, in your lives, then it would be an appropriate time to herald the event. So when the first sliver of the new moon was sighted, See Mishnah Tractate Rosh Hashanah beginning in chapter 1. The witnesses were gathered at the temple, and they were quizzed as to what they saw and when by the priests, who would then verify the testimony and call for the blowing of the shofar from the Temple Mount to inform all that the new year had arrived and that the day was a high Sabbath of no work except for cooking up a celebration feast at home. This wasn't a festival day spent in Jerusalem unless you lived very close by. No one was required to be there until the first day of the 8-day festival of Sukkot. There are theories, ones that I actually used to teach as proven fact, about coronations being held on this day, but the evidence isn't as rock solid as I once believed. That's the importance of looking at modern scholarship and not just stuff that's 70 years old or more. We do learn more and more all the time through archaeology and such, and old theories can be overturned and old facts can be thrown into doubt, and the Dead Sea Scrolls changed a lot. Given that the Bible itself doesn't make this plain, it becomes a firm maybe, and not a hard fact. What I can tell you is that the claim that the first of Tishri, being a day that cannot be entirely known beforehand due to the need to cite a specific moon phase, is somehow what Yeshua, or you may call him Jesus, was referring to when he talked about the day and hour that no one knows but the Father in Matthew 24:36, Mark 13:32, Luke 12:46 is just pure conjecture. There is no record either in or outside the Bible making that claim, not in the Bible or any ancient text. Not the First Testament, or what some people call the Old Testament, or the Second Testament. Not in the Dead Sea Scrolls, in the apocryphal or pseudepigraphic or extra-biblical wisdom literature. Not in the Church Fathers, not in Philo, Josephus, or in the Talmud. Anyone who presents it as though it is proven and obvious, or everyone knew it was referring to that, are doing so without a shred of proof. I used to do that, and I cannot apologize enough. It was back when I wrongly thought I could believe people who said they had proof when they had none. It can be argued, but that's all. We must be honest about there being absolutely no primary source evidence of the claim. But frankly, we don't need that day to be the date of Yeshua's return as king, and who knows, maybe it will be, to have this day be incredibly important on a cosmic level, meaning that it affects the world both in the scene on this side of the veil, and also on the other side of the veil that we cannot see but is only visible to God, angels, and demons. The two realities are entirely connected, even if it's only obvious to them and not to us. Jewish wisdom says that this is the day that the books are opened and all people are subject to judgment that will occur over the 10 days between Tishri 1 and Yom Kippur, when people's fates for the next year are sealed. If that is true, then boy howdy, that is a matter of great cosmic significance, and all the world hangs in the balance every year during those 10 days called the Days of Awe. Not to be confused with the bringing in of a new baby, kitten, or puppy into the house, which are called the Days of Awe and last a lot longer than 10 days. What we do know is that the month of Tishri marks the end of the ingathering of the harvest and the beginning of the planting season. The Gezer calendar, found in 1908, written in either Paleo-Hebrew or Phoenician, and dated to around the 10th century BCE, lays out the agricultural calendar and translates roughly as 2 months gathering, which would respond to Tishri and Cheshvan, being September and October, the beginning of the agricultural and civil year, and all the 3 fall festivals. The next line reads 2 months planting, and that would correspond to Kislev and Tevet, which is roughly November, December, the season of Hanukkah. 2 months late sowing, that would correspond to Shavat and Adar, which on our calendars is roughly January and February, and is the new year of trees and the time of Purim. 1 month cutting flax, and that would be Nisan, which is around March and the time of the Passover. 1 month reaping barley, Iyar, that would be April on our calendar. The counting of the Omer. 1 month reaping and measuring grain, that would be Sivan, which is around May and the time of Shavuot and Pentecost. 2 months pruning, which would be Tammuz and Av, and that'd be June and July. That's the time of Tisha B'Av, and the dry summer months of weeping for Tammuz that we see in Ezekiel. 1 month of summer fruit, Elul, and that's roughly August, and the 40 days of repentance ending with Yom Kippur. And it is signed by the scribe who wrote this, Abiyah. So let's go over what was actually written without all my commentary. 2 months gathering, 2 months planting, 2 months late sowing, 1 month cutting flax, 1 month reaping barley, 1 month reaping and measuring grain, 2 months pruning, 1 month summer fruit. Abiyah. For a culture who lived and died according to the agricultural success of the year, I cannot emphasize enough how important the month of Tishri was for the nation, really for all nations. This was the time when all the hard work either resulted in success or failure, and their storage rooms were either full at the end or they weren't. It was a time of relief and celebration as the land was their inheritance from God, and all the credit went to Him, or should have. But the land of Canaan had been home to many other gods, or so they believed. When it didn't rain, they sometimes cried out to Baal, the storm god, or to the shepherd god Tammuz to return from where he was imprisoned in the underworld by his wife Ishtar for half the year, or Dagon, the grain god. It is easy to casually worship Yahweh when things are going well, but as we saw in the Exodus account, a little hardship and uncertainty has people crying out to the regional gods of the land or building golden calves. Sometimes Yahweh would test them with a bad harvest to see where their hearts truly were, and sometimes the bad harvests were a reflection of their covenant unfaithfulness. Really, it was no different than how Yahweh tested them in the wilderness to get them to learn to trust Him and to cry out to Him instead of complaining to Moses. The truth is that we hate not being in control, and we will generally do anything to circumvent the need to simply trust Him. This hasn't really changed. But if the nation was doing well, and they were being blessed with abundant harvests and were crediting God for it, then Tishri was the day that the shofar would be blown 100 times, and this is my job in the family because I'm the one who learned how to make the darned thing sound like it wasn't just rhino flatulence. And the new year was ushered in, and the harvest and the goodness of the land were celebrated. This is the day that the king was celebrated for his faithfulness, provision, and abundance. It was Yahweh's day, truly, when He alone got the credit, and the people were able to begin to solemnly prepare their hearts for the next great cosmic reset of Yom Kippur. And for that, I'll see you in part 2.